And that's how it ends. A divisional round loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to talk about the game, the biggest takeaways from the loss, and how that should impact the offseason, and some of my general feelings now that the season is over today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Monday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Bills is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Well, folks, the Bills got bounced by the Bengals, 27-10 in the divisional round of the playoffs, and that's how the 2022 season comes to an end. On today's podcast, I want to discuss this from 3 different angles. First, some general thoughts on the game, then some general thoughts on the big picture, and lastly, my general feelings and emotions about this football team. Now, as for the game, losses for me are always the easiest to digest when the other team is just better. And that was the case in every imaginable way on Sunday afternoon. The Bengals were just a flat-out better football team than the Buffalo Bills, and it got out of hand quickly. You watch the game. The Bengals get the ball, 6 plays, 79 yards, touchdown. Easy, right? Easy touchdown. Very little resistance from the Bills. What do the Bills do on offense? They go 3 and out. The Bengals get the ball back. 10 plays, 72 yards, touchdown. It looked easy. What do the Bills do when they get the ball back? They go 3 and out. So they score touchdowns on their first 2 offensive possessions while you go 3 and out on your first 2 offensive possessions. And suddenly you are chasing the game script and you just don't have it. The Bengals were the more physical football team. They easily controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. They had a better game plan, and they executed way better. Both teams had some problems entering the game. The Bengals overcame their problems. The Bills didn't. Now, that doesn't mean it's not disappointing, right? It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. But to me, it's very easy to digest. The Bengals were just a flat-out better football team that were more physical. They won the line of scrimmage. They were better coached, and they executed better. That's it. It's that simple. Now let's get a little bit more in depth. We'll go offense and then defense. Offensively, the Bills had no rhythm with their play calling. Didn't mix in the run well. Didn't mix in a balanced passing attack well. You had protection issues galore. And I'll be honest, I thought it was more the protection scheme more than blockers taking L's, but certainly that happened as well. Again, they couldn't mix in the run game with any level of consistency. You scored 10 points. You're at home. You scored 10 points. Josh Allen's your quarterback. You go 4-12 on 3rd down, 1 of 3 in the red zone. It's awful, right? It's awful. You had some chances, but you didn't execute. And when I say you had chances, I mean to get out of a hole, not really ever to win the game. But I look at the moment on the first offensive drive for the Bills. 3rd down, Josh Allen just barely overthrows Stephon Diggs because he's facing pressure in his face. You're down 17-7. You get the ball with $1:49 left in the first half. You got 3 timeouts. You get the ball first in the second half. You're thinking, okay, this is your chance. You can double dip. You get the last possession of the first half. You get the first possession of the second half. This is your chance to kind of make this a game. So what happens on that possession? 1:49 left, second quarter, 3 timeouts. Well, you get to the Bengals 40-yard line. You get to the plus 40. That's as far as you can get. Punt. And then you get the ball first in the second half. 14 plays. You chew up over 7 minutes of clock. You come away with 3. That was your chance to make it a game. Not that I had any confidence that the Bills could continue scoring or continue stopping them to be in a situation where you could actually win, but that was your chances. The last thing I'll mention offensively here is 3rd and 2 with 17 seconds left in the third quarter. 3rd and 2, 17 seconds left in the third quarter. You're down 24-10. Josh drops it right into Gabe Davis's hands on a deep shot. Gabe can't haul it in. You punt. And I would disagree with that decision to punt. I know the Bills are backed up in their own territory, but you're putting yourself in a position where you're going into the fourth quarter down by two touchdowns. You need a lot to go your way to overcome that. It's 4th and 2. You have the ball. You needed to be aggressive there and keep your offense out on the field, because there wasn't any indication that you were going to stop them enough times or score enough times to put yourself in position to win the game. You had to maximize your opportunities. I think that was a bad decision to punt that football. Defensively, you got your butts kicked up front by 3 backup offensive linemen, and Ted Karras, their center, was pretty much banged up the entire game. Their only starter was the rookie from North Dakota State, Cordell Volson. They kicked your butt up front. Those Bengals offensive linemen, they took it personal. They delivered. They controlled the line of scrimmage. Bengals couldn't run the ball all year, and especially late, they couldn't run the ball. They come into Buffalo, they rack up 172 rushing yards on 34 carries, over 5 yards per run. Couldn't get any pass rush. You had goofy defensive schemes with weird blitzes that were delayed, that were never going to get there against a quarterback that kills the blitz. You had coverage busts. 2 guys buzzing down into the flat. Jamar Chase is wide open in the middle of the field. Well, I'm glad you took away Mitchell Wilcox in the flat and didn't account for Chase to allow them to score an easy touchdown. You just did nothing defensively to take them out of their rhythm at all. I think you had 2 negative plays maybe on defense, no pressure on the quarterback with any level of consistency against literally an entire slate of backup offensive linemen, and you didn't come close to forcing a turnover. Pretty easy to digest here, folks. The Bills got out-physicaled, they got out-coached, they got outplayed, and their season's over. It's harder for me to digest 13 seconds when you know you just didn't put your players in the right position to win a football game. I can deal with just being the lesser team and getting beat. That's easy to digest. It's harder for me when you have historical collapses or you have moments that a play was there to be made and it cost you the game. There wasn't one thing to point to. The Bengals out-physicaled the Bills, they out-coached the Bills, and they out-executed the Bills in Buffalo in the playoffs, and that's how your season ends. I hope you've been getting in on the action over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is my favorite daily fantasy resource. How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you could up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, golf, college sports, you name it. You can find it over at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. Just don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. One thing that Brandon Beane said after the Bills lost to the Houston Texans in the playoffs back in 2019, and he said this, I feel like every single offseason, and it's really hit home for me, and it gives me a nice angle to look at the football team through. And he says, when you're eliminated, when you lose in the playoffs, that game is going to reveal your biggest issues as a football team, right? It's going to be emblematic of your biggest problems. And so every time that this happens, now this is a fourth year in a row where the Bills have suffered a playoff loss, I like to take an opportunity to consider what I thought were the biggest issues from the game that were emblematic of an entire season that sets a foundation for what you need to be considering in the offseason. And I have 4 things here. I guess maybe you could say 5, but I have 4 things here. Number 1 is my prevailing thought on this football team right now. It's that your defense never shows up against top offenses in the playoffs. It has not been good enough. And it leads me to the question, has Leslie Frazier run his course in Buffalo? I'm willing to ask the question. Has Leslie Frazier run his course in Buffalo? He's had some really good defenses year over year. But in the playoffs against top offenses, it doesn't show up ever. And that goes back to the playoff loss to Houston, where Houston was not a good offense that year. And you shut them out in the first half and you collapsed down the stretch. The last 3 seasons, 2 games against Kansas City, 1 against the Bengals, you've given up an average of 36 points per game on defense and an average of 468 yards per game. It has not been good enough in the playoffs. And I don't expect you as a defense to completely shut down top-tier NFL offenses with top-tier quarterbacks like Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. But it has to be better. You can't just go out and dominate average and bad offenses and then perform so poorly against the best offenses that you can't even compete in the games. It's getting old, right? I respect Coach Frazier and what he's done in Buffalo, but I am starting to wonder if he's run his course. And my understanding with Coach Frazier is that his contract expires after this season. And so with that in mind, I become very interested in John Butler, your secondary coach, Bobby Babich, as guys who I think have bright futures in the NFL that will probably be coordinators one day. Maybe you should let that happen with you. Maybe you should let Leslie Frazier's contract expire and consider if John Butler or Bobby Babich are the right coaches to lead your defense moving forward, because it's not showing up in big games. And is Sean McDermott responsible for that too? Yes. But I look at, it's Leslie Frazier's defense. He's the coordinator. Sean McDermott's the CEO of the football team. Of course, he's responsible for everything. But I put this a bit more on Frazier than I do McDermott. So number 1, the defense against top offenses in the playoffs, it continues to not be good enough. Number 2, not good enough on the line of scrimmage, and this is disappointing, both offensively and defensively. Could not compete with the Bengals. Defensively, of course, no Von Miller hurts. Not having Daquan Jones hurt a ton. Jordan Phillips is, he can't play with this shoulder thing. Watch him play. He's just leaning into guys. He's not effective with his current shoulder situation. And so, yeah, that obviously, that hurts in a game like this, but Rousseau and Oliver needed to be more impactful. Oliver as a top 10 pick, Rousseau as a first-round pick in year 2. I'm not saying those guys didn't have good seasons, but in this game, they needed to be more impactful. Epinesa and Basham, they looked like replacement-level rotational defensive linemen as experienced second-round picks against a bunch of backups. They looked like backups. Couldn't rise to the occasion to make an impact. I don't want to say too much about Tim Settle, but as a guy you brought in, to really beef up your rotation. Was the impact good enough? Not against the Bengals, it wasn't. Your defensive line up front, the pride and joy of your football team. You continuously hear McDermott and Bean talk about how they invest there. It starts there. That's how they're going to win up front. Wasn't good enough. And yeah, Vaughn, would be nice to have Vaughn. Be nice to have Daquan Jones in this game. But I still think you had enough talent there to not get beat up like you did. Bengals can't run the football all year long. You give up 172 yards, 5 yards per carry, 34 rushes. Not good enough. Offensively, got to be better up front. I thought the protection scheme, like I said earlier, I thought the protection scheme failed more than the players taking L's, but that's still a problem. You got to figure out this situation of how you're going to handle the blitz from a protection standpoint. I think the Bills get crossed up all the time. And Lou Anarumo did a really good job of sending pressure from different angles with different timing and really confusing the Bills' protection schemes. And I think you got to look at that left guard spot for sure. Was Roger Saffold what you wanted him to be this year at left guard? Because I hear you. You want the offensive line to be better. Me too. Well, you're locked into Dawkins and Morse, and I think that's a good thing. I think Bates is a perfectly good starting right guard. So that brings you to left guard and right tackle. Well, Spencer Brown is a very promising young player. Certainly feels like he has all the ability to be an impact starter. You want to look for him to take a big jump in year 3, but he needs to have competition, and you need to look at that left guard spot. But number 2, you're just not good enough on the line of scrimmage offensively or defensively. And I don't think it was just against the Bengals. I would be concerned about the Bills' O-line and D-line against Kansas City, against Philadelphia, against San Francisco. The teams that are left, right? And I'm recording this during Cowboys and 49ers, so I don't know who wins that game. But I would have a lot of concern against those teams. Number 3, you didn't have a good enough wide receiver 2 to make teams pay for so much attention being paid to Stephon Diggs. Am I calling out Gabriel Davis? Yeah, in a way I am. Because when that much attention is being paid to Stephon Diggs, there have been games down the stretch in particular where teams have taken away Stephon Diggs. You need to have that number 2 receiver that makes them pay. You need to be able to turn to that number 2 and run the offense through them and make that defense pay. Gabriel Davis could not do it. Did Davis have a bad year? No, I think he had a decent amount of production. But I think there's more to it. And I think his limited skill set doesn't enable him to be that guy that can command the volume and be consistent and make teams pay for the attention they give Stephon Diggs. Now, in the past, the Bills have been able to lean on the slot for that production through Cole Beasley. And I think that situation hurt them all season long, whether it was Isaiah McKenzie and his inconsistencies as a player, Jamison Crowder and what he could have brought, but he was injured. And then you bring in Beasley late, and I thought Beasley played well against the Bengals, but I think that ability all season long would have really helped this offense find better rhythm. So bottom line is I don't think your receiving core outside of Diggs was good enough against the Bengals and hasn't been good enough all season long. Number 4, I think your young offensive play caller really hurt you in this game. All things considered, I think Ken Dorsey had a lot of success in year 1, but I think it was more moments than it was consistency and rhythm. And Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, took this man to school. And look, between the Week 17 game and this one, I've given Lou Anarumo all the flowers somebody can be given, right? I've talked all about the diversity of his schemes, how multiple they are, situational football. He's phenomenal. but man, did he outclass you in a big way. And I think Ken Dorsey will be better for this season. He's going to learn a lot. But I think that held you back in this type of game. And that'll be something that needs to improve next year. Now, all of my suggestions here, all these things that I've identified here in this segment don't mean, well, get rid of everything and everyone and fire everyone, but you need growth in certain areas. I'm not suggesting to fire Ken Dorsey, but I think there has to be growth. He can't hold you back against top defenses again, for example. So when I look at this game and I think about the biggest issues, and going back to Brandon Beane's general philosophy that when you're eliminated, it's going to reveal your biggest issues as a football team, Leslie Frazier and how his defenses continue to perform against top offenses, not being good enough on the line of scrimmage offensively or defensively, not having enough weapons to make teams pay for the attention they give to Stephon Diggs, and then growth from your young offensive play caller. Those are the things that prevail in my mind as your biggest issues from this game that are indicators of where you really need to ask yourself hard questions as a football team. The NFL playoffs are here, and we are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with a $150 bonus in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use, so football fans don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. In this closing segment, and I thought about leading with this, but I felt like we had to get all that out of the way before I can get to this. I want to just kind of share how I'm feeling, and we'll talk about what's next for the podcast. And whenever big things happen with the team, and I mean big things, whether that's a playoff loss, Josh Allen contract extension, trading for Stephon Diggs, giving a huge contract to Von Miller, right? There's been some big moments in our journey here on this podcast. And I always know that those moments are important for me on this podcast. And one thing that I always tell myself is I try to find what to say during the show, right? As I plan out the outline, I always tell myself, Joe, tell them how you feel. Be honest and tell them how you feel. And so I want to do that right now. Now that this 2022 season is over for the Buffalo Bills, I want to tell you how I'm feeling. And when I think back on the 2022 Buffalo Bills, two words come to mind over anything else. Those words are grateful and proud. Let me explain. The Bills played 18 games. They won 14 of them. 13 regular season wins, the most in franchise history, tying the 13 wins they had in 1990, 1991, and 2020. The Bills had a 7-game winning streak in the regular season. It's the longest winning streak for the team since 1990 during the regular season. AFC East champs for a third year in a row. Playoff wins in 3 consecutive seasons. They've been to the divisional round in 3 consecutive seasons. Josh Allen's been to the divisional round for 3 consecutive seasons. Peyton Manning didn't get to the divisional round until his age 27 season. Drew Brees didn't get there until his age 27 season. Aaron Rodgers Didn't get there until his age 27 season. Josh Allen has gotten to the divisional round 3 times before his age 27 season. I am grateful for another season where the Buffalo Bills were among the best teams in the NFL. And listen, folks, I know that a lot of people believe in Super Bowl or bust. I have always shot down that ideology because I think it's ridiculous. Only one team ends their season happy. One. You either stink and didn't make the playoffs, you lose in the playoffs, you lose in the Super Bowl, or you win the Super Bowl. That's it. One team ends their season happy. Single elimination playoffs, weird shaped ball. Be as good as you can for as long as you can and hope to get lucky. I'm grateful for another season where the Buffalo Bills were among the best teams in the NFL. But even more importantly, I'm proud of how they were able to do that despite facing incredible adversity, what I would categorize as unprecedented adversity this season. And that starts with how the Buffalo Bills as an organization, the players, coaches, staff, emerged as community leaders in the aftermath of the mass shooting at Tops. Really proud of the organization and how they stepped up in that moment. How they rallied around Dawson Knox over the unexpected loss of his younger brother. The first snowstorm that forced the Bills to play a home game in Detroit, and all that went into that happening and getting those players to Detroit. A generational blizzard that took the lives of over 40 people in Western New York, and the challenges that created for not just the community, but obviously the team during Christmas. The Damar Hamlin situation and the unity and leadership shown through that makes me proud. Not to mention devastating injuries to Micah Hyde, to Von Miller, the scare with Josh Allen. Dane Jackson left the football field in an ambulance this year. This team has been through a lot, and despite all of that, delivered the season that they did. I'm proud and I'm grateful. So what's next? Well, I'm going to be here for you all off season long, Monday through Friday. That doesn't change whether we are in season or out of season. So immediately, our next few shows will be herd mentality. Of course, I want to get to all those burning questions that you guys have coming out of this game. I want to get to, obviously, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane will have their year-end press conferences this week, and there's always a lot of good information out of that, so I want to discuss that as well. And then we'll start evaluating this roster. We'll evaluate this coaching staff. We'll work in some fun concepts. We'll talk about free agency. The Bills obviously have their own free agents and expiring contracts, but also looking at the opportunities to improve through free agency. Of course, the NFL draft, we'll talk all about that. We talk Buffalo Bills football all year long on this podcast, so come along for the journey. I think, look, nothing is quite like the season. I love the season. Don't ever get me wrong. I want to cover and talk about as many games as possible. But the offseason, man, this is where I really have a lot of fun on this podcast. And so I hope that you will come along for the journey. Make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.